Hey, this is MentalOne here. Hopefully you guys can hear me better than you could before, because did some settings with my microphone and stuff, so hopefully you guys can hear game volume this time. I'm going to be going into the basics of Protoss versus Protoss, the whole matchup, early, mid-game, and late game, some of the build orders and what they do, what the point of them is, and everything. I'm just going to be playing a PvP that I played yesterday, that I think was pretty fun. You guys can watch that in the background. You don't have to be just like staring at a white background or something while I talk. But I'm going to go into the basics of everything that I know about PvP, that is, from a master's perspective, what there is to do, how you can do it, and everything like that. So we're starting off in the early game. I'm going to just kind of take you guys through the whole, what PvP can become, from early to late game. In the early game, you can start out with either a 1-gate opening or a 2-gate opening. Any other opening than this is probably cheese, like a proxy 2-gate or cannon rush, something like that, because those are the really two good openings that you can do. I'm going to put those build orders in the description below, but for the most part, 2-gate became popular a little while back because it can hold a 4-gate much easier than the former 1-gate could, and it just gives you map control. It's pretty good because you can get 3 Stalkers out really quick. It's what people refer to as a 3-Stalker rush usually. But a 1-gate, you can get your tech up quicker, and that's why it's recently become more popular than the 2-gate. Because you can get, recently there's been a new addition of people getting 2 gases very quickly, and only putting 2 guys in them for a little while, and then putting a 3rd in eventually, and getting their tech up very quickly with only 1 gateway. It's possible to hold 4 gates this way, and that's really, you have to be able to hold a 4-gate if you want to have a good Protoss versus Protoss build, because otherwise it's just not going to work, because you're going to get 4-gated. So right now I'm going to do a 1-gate. I'm trying to open up 1-gate for the most part these days in PvP, because, like I said, get your tech up quicker, and I don't really need the map control early on. Really, the best thing I can think of doing with the 2-gate these days is a really tricky 4-gate. Just act like I'm going to go for a really tech play and then 4-gate. And some people fall for that, especially in the lower leagues. Once you get into mid-masters and stuff, people don't really fall for 4-gates so much. After the early game, you have your 1-gate or your 2-gate. Typically, if you're going to go into the mid-game and the late game, you're going to go for a 1-gate. Otherwise, you're just going to be a little bit behind. So I'm just going to assume for the rest of this game, or for the rest of this, discussion, I guess, I don't know what to call it, basics video, that we went for a 1-gate. After that, you have your 3 tech choices. You can either go for Robo, you can go for Stargate, or you can go for Twilight Council. I'm going to start out with Robo because I think that's kind of the most popular on North American ladder right now, at least in lower leagues. I know in the very, very highest level of play, it's not actually too common to go for just standard 2 gateway expand with Immortals. But for the most part, you'll see it a lot because you're actually going to be playing on the ladder, and on the ladder, that's a pretty common build. I do it a lot. I think it's kind of like the meat and potatoes of Protoss versus Protoss, because it doesn't just straight up lose to anything. I mean, it's worse against Phoenixes, but even then it's not terrible. But with Robo, you can do 2 to 3-gate Robo expand, 3-gate Robo expand. I don't do it very much, but a lot of pros do it because you can put on a lot of pressure. You can go for 1-base Colossus push or something like that, or you can go for Speed Prisms, which is actually what I'm doing in this game if you're watching that. Speed Prism Immortal is very deadly and a lot of fun, especially on certain maps. After, other than Robo, you can go for Twilight Council. You can get Blink. It's usually what you're going to see out of Twilight Council these days, is Blink play, maybe Blink Obs, although that was really popular a couple seasons back when Antigua Shipyard came out, because that was when people were doing 2-gates, and then after 2-gate you would just go for Blink Stalker Obs. Especially on a map like Antigua, you'd pretty much see every game was Blink Stalker Obs versus Robo. And it's kind of died down. I think some people are still going for Blink Stalkers just to beat Phoenix, but it's kind of... maps like Cloud Kingdom and Antigua Shipyard, Blink can work, but it's just not as good, I don't think, on most maps. Like Robo, you can do pretty much on any map. Phoenix, you can do pretty much on any map. Yeah, there are pros and cons to each map, but Blink depends really heavily on the map. And the final tech path you can go is for Stargate, aka Phoenix, because you really don't need Void Rays in PvP. that tells you go Void Rays is kind of probably not in the highest of leagues. From Phoenix, you can go Phoenix Robo, you can go for a Phoenix All-In, like a 4-gate Phoenix. That used to be really popular a little while ago. It's kind of died down a little bit since people learned how to hold it. And you can go, I guess, for like a Sky Protoss build. I've seen that work, actually, surprisingly. But I don't really like it. Don't think it's that good. Those are the basic strategies. There are, like, variations and lots of different versions of these builds, and a bunch of them. Those are just the general ones you're probably going to be seeing on ladder. Yeah, I think that's all of them. Basically, what you guys need to know is Robo, typically not the best against Phoenix. Phoenix, typically not the best against Blink. Blink, typically not the best against Robo. That's just kind of the way Protoss versus Protoss works, kind of like rock, paper, scissors. Where if you go Robo, you have an advantage over a Twilight Council player. If you go Twilight Council, you have an advantage over a Phoenix player, and you get the picture. In all of these ways you can win, like even if you're going up against Phoenix as Robo, you can transition and then go back into Colossus, and you can still win just as easily. For instance, if you're going for two gate Immortal expand, which is what I like to do a lot, although I kind of haven't been doing it very recently, but it's even if someone goes for like really heavy Phoenix play, you just get like Blink and then continue with your Robo play. You can actually hold off the Blinks, what are they called, Phoenixes, until you get Colossus out, and then it just becomes a late game situation, and Colossus are always necessary in the late game, so you'll be ahead. I was kind of hoping that I would talk this through as the game progressed, but this is actually kind of a long game, so I'm going to speed it up a bit. And what else is there in the mid game? Mid game, you basically have to be aware of your opponent's expansion timing. If they're expanding like any time earlier than 7 minutes is usually pretty greedy, unless they pulled something really crazy in the beginning. So you can just all in and kill them. That's nothing wrong with that. You have to have some sort of protection in order to expand in the mid game. You can't just go for like 2-gate expand without any mortals or anything. People used to like to do 3-gate expand. I still think some people do it. I don't think that's a good build at all. You're behind in your tech, and if someone just goes for a mortal expand, they're like 30 seconds to a minute slower in their nexus, and they're still better than you in tech, so they'll end up winning in the late game anyway. So yeah, pretty much you gotta have either better tech or map control or something in order to go for an expansion. Sometimes you'll see people go for Phoenix and then expand, or Blink Stalkers and expand, even though they would lose in a straight up battle. They're just doing so much harassment and stuff to keep their opponent inside their base, and that's why they can go for an expansion off of that. What else is in the mid game? Basically, you spend the mid game fighting with your opponent, trying to do some economic damage maybe, if you can, and then you just try to transition into what I'm doing in this game right now, which is going to be Colossus and upgrades, because that's the earlier stages of the late game is where Colossus production starts, and so do the upgrades. So I'm moving into the late game now. Late game usually consists of 4 big principles that you need for PvP, which are Colossus, upgrades, Mothership, and positioning. You can go without a Mothership if you have good positioning, but in the late game of PvP, you need to get a Mothership. It's just as important as Colossus. If not, well, I don't know, more important, but it's certainly something that you need in the late game. Upgrades, same way. You can survive for a while without upgrades, but eventually your opponent's going to have 3-3-3, and if you're stuck on like 1-1-1 or 1-1 or something like that, 2-1, you're just going to lose even if you have the better army composition and better positioning. And of course, positioning with Colossus is crucial. It's what keeps you alive from the mid game, or from late in the mid game to all the way to the super late game. The reason why you can do that is you can just keep cutting corners, and because you have a defensive posture in PvP, if you're defending an expansion, you can keep cutting those corners, and you can just keep surviving, because your opponent can't attack you. You don't want to attack into Colossus, like, ever, because if you're attacking into a Colossus army, like when it's defending a base or something, they immediately have the concave, and that's huge in Colossus versus Colossus wars. And basically it can cost you a lot of good games. I've lost games because I've attacked with Colossus. I've won way more games just because people will attack me when I have Colossus, and it's just never a good position. I don't usually attack until I have a Mothership, or unless I'm just doing like harassment or trying to take out an expansion or something. I won't move out with my main army, is basically what I'm trying to say. You don't have to hit your Mothership on your first max. A lot of people will go for it on their second max out. I like to get it on my first. It's kind of like a hero-esque style that I play, but that first max out, I think you can protect yourself with just Colossus and positioning, and you don't need you don't need to like, get a whole 200 army. I think it's kind of just unnecessary, and then you just max out with your Mothership on your first max rather than the second max. Some people disagree. Some people think it's better to go for Mothership on the second max. What I'm saying by second and first max is after you get to 200 and then trade that army and then do it again. I don't like doing that because you just leave yourself wide open if you're trading, if you don't do it like perfectly. And I don't like to, put into that hands like that random chance. I'd rather, control my own fate and rely on defending. You do need to get a third base in Protoss vs. Protoss late game, but I wouldn't recommend getting more than 60 probes. The reason why I say this is because eventually, after a point, you have enough money to just get the Mothership, get your constant Colossus production, get a bunch of gateways, and then you're just going to start stacking money. And that stacked money is necessary to remax with a gateway army, but you don't need like 10,000 minerals, 10,000 gas, and a weak army. You need 3,000 minerals, 3,000 gas, and a very, very strong army. And the reason why I say a strong army is a full 160 supply, 150 supply army. That's huge. It's way bigger than an army of not 150. Never do math in a cast. Yeah, if you have like a 60 supply army, you only have a 140 supply army and 60 supply workers, which is why you don't really need more than 60. Usually people will say a max is 120 army supply, but in PvP I'd like to have it more like 150, 145 maybe. That's ideal, because the bigger the army, the more Colossus you can have, the better everything you can get. I like to have about 9 Colossus. Some people say 7 to 8. I say I add one more, and then I just win in those army battles because I can position my Colossus really well. People don't like to position their Colossus. They think it's too micro intensive. I don't think so. I think it's pretty simple. You just, concave your Colossus and then, get a vortex. It's not like, multitasking in PvT. It's pretty simple. So I get a 9th Colossus. That firepower with upgrades is just so good. Upgrades are always important, but you don't really want to be starting them until late in the mid-game, if not the late game, because if you start them any earlier, then you don't have that positional advantage that Colossus gave you. So I usually start my upgrades right around the time I'm getting Colossus. That way I can defend my base with Colossus and at the same time get those upgrades and have a weaker army, but I have the better tech in the form of those upgrades. And in the late game of Protoss vs. Protoss, and really with the late game of any matchup, your bases become much less important than your army. Your Colossus count, your Mothership count, which is either 1 or 0, becomes way, 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 way more important than anything else. You can lose all your gateways and rebuild them. You can lose your Nexuses and rebuild them, but your Mothership, if you lose that, or if you lose like 5 or 6 Colossus for no reason, that's something that will cost you the game oftentimes, because your opponent can just push right in and kill you before you can rebuild it. Like you'll see in this game, I don't move out until I get my Mothership. I think that Vortex is just such a huge positional advantage. If you guys watched my recent upload of myself versus Dulcet Day, it's just like PvP Dulcet Day or something like that on Antigua Shipyard, it just shows how important a Mothership is. I literally kill his 200 max army with like a 100 army just because I have a Mothership. And I do it like twice. And the Mothership is just as important as positioning, just as important as upgrades, just as important as Colossus, because the Mothership guarantees you a decent position. It's like force fields in Protoss vs. Zerg. I don't know why I have that right like that. It's probably really annoying for you guys. Even if you have a crappy position, a Mothership can just vortex a large portion of your opponent's army, and then you can just position yourself wherever you want around that. In this game, I actually just won regardless because A moved in because my opponent had crappy upgrades and no Mothership. But usually you'll have to vortex your opponent's Mothership or feedback it. Feedbacking it's the best, but you know, vortexing it doesn't hurt either. But getting 2 vortexes off on Colossus is just like, well, I win the game because I can just position my Colossus all around it, all, you know, perfectly staggered and everything. And that's huge. People like to mix in Void Rays with their Colossus armies. I don't like that. It's only good if they don't scout it, and otherwise you can just get Stalkers. Don't like getting that many Stalkers, don't like getting that many Immortals, and that's pretty much all there is about PvP. Some people don't like getting Colossus. These are the people that lose in the late game regardless of how good they are. And that's pretty much it. This has been the basics of Protoss versus Protoss. I might do other matchups if people like this. Seems like it'd be kind of boring, but I don't know. If you want to take notes on this kind of thing, it seems like it'd be pretty beneficial if you don't know. So I will see you guys later. Goodbye.